Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been asked to talk about the future of practice management. And I want to start really with a personal story, because I want to frame what I'm going to say next with what I'm going to say now. Now, I was born before the NHS. Now, most audiences at this point gasp and say, surely not, Roy. So we'll just do that bit again. And we'll edit the last bit out. Right. I was born before the NHS. I was born in the East End of London. My dad was a window cleaner. My mum was a shop worker. And I was born in a single-bedroom flat in the East End on a sweltering hot day. My dad saved up the equivalent of 3 weeks' wages in order to get a woman to come in and look after me, who wasn't a midwife, really. And my mum says to me that she was 12 hours in labour, no gas and no air, but it was worth every minute, she said, Roy, worth every minute. And of course, it wasn't until a couple of years later that the then Labour government introduced the NHS. And it took off the shoulders of working people the worry and anxiety of accident, illness, maternity, and changed people's lives. And by then, we'd moved from East London into South London. And I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I'd been ill all day. And my mum was kind of worried and anxious and didn't really quite know what to do, and my grandma didn't either. My dad came home from work, and by about 9 o'clock at night, they decided I wasn't getting any better, despite having a glass of gin and some, whatever it was, the equivalent of Calpol. And my dad wrapped me in a blanket and carried me in his arms about 3/4 of a mile to the GP's surgery. By then it was 9:30 at night. And the GP's surgery was the GP's house. And he knocked the GP up. The GP came to the door, and we went in, and he had a look at me and he said, "This boy needs to go to hospital. We'll take him now." And the GP took us in his car to the hospital. And it was the first time that anyone in my family had ever been in a car. And I had a twisted bowel that kids get, but in those days it was much more serious. And he saved my life. And he was a wonderful man. He lived where we lived. He was different to us. He had cufflinks and we rolled up our sleeves. And we wore jumpers and he had a waistcoat. We had push bikes and he had a car. But he was like us. He lived where we lived, and he was the man who looked after our families. When he died, we all went to his funeral. He was a wonderful man. So that's where I am on what you call primary care, that I still try and call family doctoring. That's where my heart is. And that's where I think your heart is. From there, we go to where? Well, I was asked to write a piece just recently about the future of primary care. And I'm going to read just the first 3 paragraphs to you. If primary care has an engine room, it has to be found in the office of the practice manager. Among the tea bags and the hobnobs, the information, the data, the computer screens, the post-it notes, the spreadsheets and graphs, this is the engine room. Practice managers have been on a journey from receptionist to manager, from matriculation to master's degree. It's been a journey from indistinguishable to indispensable. Where do we go from here? Well, where do we go from here? That's the interesting thing. Now, the title of the article, I'm popping a bit, I'm just going to move that down. The title of the article was Haruspex. Now, Haruspex were the Greek definers of the future. They used to look at the goat entrails and see what the future was. And you might as well do that, really, to try and find out what the future is for practice managers, because practice managers are intrinsically bound up in the future of the NHS. And the future of the NHS is not looking too good. Since 2010, we've had flatline funding. There are 30,000 vacancies in nursing. Doctors are retiring. Becoming a GP is a less attractive job than it was. This is a whole service that is in crisis. And if you think someone's going to come along with a big bundle of money and fix it, then they won't. And I tell you why they won't. Because the gap in the funding by 2020 is £30 billion. No government can fix that in the life of one parliament. It's impossible. And with Brexit, whatever you think of Brexit, whatever your politics, I don't care whether you're an inner or an outer, it doesn't matter, it's causing uncertainty. Companies are not sure what's going to happen next. And the economy will take a hit. So we're not going to be able to solve our problems. The black hole that is the £30 billion in NHS finances will not be filled with money. But it will be filled with innovation, skills, talent, and working in entirely different ways. Do I see the future of primary care as GPs practicing in practices, many of them that are landlocked, that they can't get a planning consent for? With GPs being self-employed in this unfortunate relationship there is between a self-employed contractor and a national service? I don't think so. I really don't. And we're going through a period now where we think the answer is to merge, don't we? We're going to merge, we're going to federate, we're going to get bigger. If you think you get bigger and your problems get smaller, think again. One of the books that I wrote was about mergers in the NHS. It was called Mergers, Management and Mayhem. The subtitle was something I saw in the States. The subtitle was, "Two Turkeys Don't Make an Eagle." So we will go through periods of merging, we will go through periods of change, and we've got STPs that are telling us they're going to close 300 beds and you're going to look after everybody in the community. I don't think you can do that with the best will in the world. But we will go through a phase where we'll merge, and we'll go through a phase where we'll try and get bigger and leave our problems behind. But it isn't going to work. The only thing that will work is a root and branch change of how we deliver healthcare. But you know, why do are the public really interested in primary care and secondary care? Don't they just want care? Why do we make that demarcation? It's historical. It goes back to 1948 when Bevan negotiated the deal. And here we are all these years later with the same model. And yes, it's uncomfortable. And yes, it's difficult. And if we think about our blue sky thinking, what is the likely future? Well, look, who would have predicted this? Who would have predicted grocers that sell petrol stations that are florists, airlines that sell pensions, record companies that sell booze, estate agents who are insurance firms, telecom companies who rent videos, underwear retailers who sell money, film companies that are hoteliers, insurers who are invisible? Who would have predicted that? Who will predict the future of primary care? I don't know. But I think you know it's not practice management. It's business management. It's not entrepreneurial. It's corporate. It's not taking data and feeding the beast. It's taking data and analysing it and asking ourselves, what happened and why? How did we fix it? Did it work? What did it cost? Can we afford it? Do we want to do it again? It'll be data-driven. The work becomes more sophisticated. And yes, there will still be someone who has to put the toner in the copier. But I don't think it'll be you. I think the whole thing would look very different. I think GPs will play a minor role in healthcare of the future. They will play a role alongside healthcare professionals who we will see change the way they work. Already, we're getting allied health professionals like occupational therapists and physiotherapists who can prescribe. Already with a primary care home that's being run by the NAPC, we're seeing an entirely different approach to delivering healthcare. The future will not look like the past, and it will be driven by the public. The public who will just get sick of trying to ring up and get an appointment between 8:23 and 8:28 in the morning and can't get through. And that's not a criticism of you. That's because you're swamped. The public will say, do you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm going to buy an app. It's called Babylon. It's £35 a month, and I can get straight to a doctor on FaceTime, on my phone, and it'll look after me, the wife, and my 2 kids. And no, it isn't as good. And no, it's not family business and practice. But it's the way it's going to go. Because getting money from your bank is not as good as being able to go to the bank and talk to the bank manager, but we stand in a hole in the wall now and persuade ourselves it's more convenient. It will change, and it will change radically. And we will have to change the relationship that we have with our patients. Who likes the self-checkouts at the supermarkets? Well, you like the self-checkouts at the supermarket. Okay, fine. Some of you, who doesn't like the self-checkout? Fine, okay, fine. And I suppose you send a butler. You say you're probably not really sure what I'm talking about as a celebrity. I was working for a big supermarket. I can't tell you which one because I signed a confidentiality agreement, but every little helps. And we got some in-store video where people queued to use the self-checkouts, and the girls at the ordinary checkouts were sitting doing nothing because people think that if they do it themselves, it's quicker. That's why people love change, if they think they're in charge. I think it's quicker. You go there, you put the stuff through. It's all very well, and then suddenly it's unexpected item in the bagging area. And everybody looks at you. There's 50,000 items in Tesco's. What have I bought that's taken them by surprise? Buy a bottle of wine. Authorization required. And you stand clutching your bottle of Pinot Grigio like you've escaped from rehab. And then a child comes and authorizes it. That's called the customer adding value to the business. Can our patients add value to the business? We've got 3.5 million people who've got diabetes. Are we really going to be able to look after them in your practices in the future? When there are 5 million, will you finally give up and say we have to do this online? No, it won't be as good. And it won't be family practice. But you get your money out of a hole in the wall. It's not as good as a bank. So when we look at the future and you ask me, what is the future for practice managers? I tell you what it is. It's in what I call ableness. And I define ableness as being adroitness, cleverness, competence, cunning, ingenious, knack, prowess, savvy, and sharpness. You have those skills. And I want to see every university campus offering a degree course in practice management. Because that's where the future takes us. And you know, the NHS has gone through very difficult times. I've been it since 1974, I think. And I've seen lots of changes. Always, along the line, super talented people like you with a strong sense of motivation and vision and vocation have seen the NHS through those difficult periods. And they've handed on the NHS to us. And now it's our turn. We have to see the NHS through this difficult period, this uncomfortable period, this period where change will really hurt, where we will leave behind being a practice manager and become business managers. But it's up to us. We have to do it so that we can hand on the NHS to our kids and their kids, so there's a health service for them. And it's going to be difficult. But you've seen the NHS through some very difficult times. You've already done that. And you've done a terrific job. How many GPs would have made any money out of QOF without you? So we know what you can do, we know what you can achieve, we know what the future looks like, and it doesn't look anything like what we're doing now. But it's up to you. Do I think you could do it? I do. Because you're doing a terrific job now. And I want you to do something for me. Would you all stand up? Would you face that direction and give the person in front of you a pat on the back and say, well done? And would you just stay standing for a moment? Because I've never spoken at this venue before. And I've been speaking to audiences for 30 years. The BMA would never invite me because I called them the British Moaners Army once, and they got totally pissed off. But I'd just like to think that I came here today, I shared some special moments with some fabulous people, and they gave me a standing ovation. Thank you very much.